welcome back to another one of my walks. Not a leaf walk because it's January and we don't have any leaves, but we do have a lot of pine trees which have needles. Anyways, I wanted to discuss the new Peter Gabriel album, which he's leaking out a single at a time on the full moon of every month this year, and the latest one is out. It's called Been Undone, and just like the previous album, I.O., this one's going to be called OI, output input, it's called Been Undone, and it has two different mixes, a brightside and a darkside of the mix. This time, I didn't really like I.O. very much. I thought it was very mechanical and overproduced for both mixes. This album gives me some hope because even though the darkside mix of Been Undone is extremely overproduced and I don't like it all, and I'll get into why, the brightside mix is really excellent. Been Undone is probably the first Peter Gabriel song in over a decade that I've liked a lot. And he's not a musician that I study his entire oeuvre very well. I don't know his Genesis stuff that well, but I do know his solo stuff very well. And I love Passion and Us and So, and I generally look up to kind of his use of the recording studio as an instrument in and of itself. He very much was a pioneer of that, being involved with SSL consoles and stuff like that. Part owner of that at one point in time. Anyways, I love the brightside mix. Why do I love it so much? Because you can really hear his band. He has some of the best musicians in the world that he regularly works with a core team of Manu Katché on drums, Tony Levin on bass, and David Rhodes on guitar. And that version of the mix is really great. You can really hear that he's got a band. You can hear their instruments. Whereas the darkside mix, you really hear what's missing. He's replaced Manu Katché's snare drum with samples. The hi-hats are more buried in the mix. Everything is way more processed and smooth. I guess the dark side is that it's the machine. And the bright side, in this case, is that it's a very human-sounding product. I think Peter Gabriel has long been very wary of having a band. He was in a very high-profile band and left it at a certain point. And I think partially because, you have to deal with everybody, all the different personalities and whatnot, and it's a very co-equal situation. And that's why he left Genesis. That said, these musicians he's working with are some of the world's best. You can't get a better bass player than Tony Levin. Hi there, kitty. Hi. Hey. Hey there. That's a happy kitty. Anyways, and Manu Katché is one of my favorite drummers. And if you stop sort of replacing all the little grace notes and the flow that he brings to things, and also the brightside mix is much more of a march because of that. Whereas the darkside mix, it actually feels less dark. There's more dynamics to the brightside mix. It's both brighter and darker at the same time. Whereas the darkside mix just feels like digital replacements of a lot of things, and everything's very smoothed out. Even Peter Gabriel's vocals, which he famously does with a very cheap $100 microphone, kind of eats the mic very close. He sings out of his range, his natural range all the time. He's kind of singing higher in a stressed voice. and it's his particular type of delivery. And what's amazing, he still really has his voice. You can hear it on his Brightside mix, how much he still has the goods in the vocal department. You lose nuance and stuff in the Darkside mix, but he gets in really close to the mic, and you get to hear a lot of his inflections and his ultra emotional delivery. And is he still prog? Of course he is. Anybody who can work the Mandelbrot set into their lyric for a song is still prog. Vocabulary matters in prog, or these progressive music. And progressive music is, pushing past the standard norms, the easy, safe formulas. And Gabriel does that. I very much appreciate these two mixes, but I only like one of them. Brightside mix really shows that he's got a great unit there, and it's extremely emotional and very human. And these days, it's less radical to be using machines and replacing every note with some other instrument or note, which you can do in the studio. It's much more radical to have excellent performances and utilize them and kind of be out on the wire, as it were, with real musicians in the room. And I very much appreciate what Gabriel has done over the years. He's got his real world studios and SSL and everything else. He's been using Fairlights and all sorts of other things. He's been a real innovator in the recording studio. And I think the Brightside mix is a new innovation in terms of trusting the human quotient again. I'd love to see him actually work with a different producer than either one of these two. It was like Spike Stent did the Brightside mix and Chad Blake did the Darkside mix. I'd like to see him work in a rawer way again. Just my thought as somebody who does some production themselves. He's a totally different kind of vocalist than I am. I'm a deep baritone. I'm actually speaking the higher range of my voice, which is kind of what Gabriel does as a singer, but I don't sing in this high range. It's just, I would lose it very quick. I don't even know how Peter Gabriel does it. Oh, look. It's a moving truck. But what I do like about Peter Gabriel is he's gone from singing in allegories and stuff like the prog stuff with Genesis and taking on characters to very highly personal things and philosophical things. I think that's much more gutsy and interesting, something that I'm still learning. Partially because I still conceive of myself primarily as a guitarist composer and not as a singer, even though apparently I can do that. Anyways, been good talking to you.